Francis is offering long-awaited apologies to Canada's Indigenous people during his trip to North America. The Pontiff just visited the site of a former residential school to share the church's regret over forcibly assimilating Native people into Christian society. The Pope is calling the six-day visit to Canada a pilgrimage of penance for atrocities that included physical and sexual abuse by Catholic missionaries. Critics say the treatment of the students led to generations of trauma and abuse. And while the Pope's apology tour focuses on Canadian schools, some Native Americans in Michigan are reacting strongly to his actions while calling on Governor Whitmer to begin our own efforts at reconciliation here at home. It's a story Paula Tutman has been covering for us. She joins us live with that new reaction. Paula.
Yeah, the first thing that's really important to know is that hundreds of remains and unmarked graves of children, babies, have been found in Canada. However, very little has been done for 3 Michigan so-called residential boarding schools. This past weekend, a large gathering of First Nations people of the Keweenaw Bay Indian community in Baraga, Michigan.
The Eagle staffs were being carried in. They kept an empty seat, an empty chair, sacred space for those children that were murdered in the schools, in the boarding schools.
These so-called residential schools were housed across North America, borders not recognized by the first people who were here. And while Pope Francis does what's being considered as the apology tour in Canada for what he calls deplorable evil, Lorraine Punkin Shenaniquet of the Gun Lake Band of Potawatomi Indians and the Lac-Courte Band of Lake Superior Indians of Wisconsin says what happened to her grandmother cannot be erased with an apology.
I say the Pope, upon arrival of the shore, needed to be arrested and taken to the World Court on charges of mass murder and genocide.
But why is that? Because he's the head of the church, but he didn't do it. So why should he be arrested?
You know why? Because he's housed the many minions of murderers and rapers.
And she is calling on Governor Whitmer to do more in the way of recognition and reconciliation for what happened in Michigan's so-called residential schools.
Because she sits on those high places, she needs to come and be a part of a powwow, be a part of seeing an empty chair.
Michelle Robinson, a member of the Ojibwe tribe, is a Metro Detroit attorney and financial advisor. Her mother and aunt were victims of these facilities.
They did not allow you to speak your language, do anything that came from your heritage. You weren't allowed to practice any of your rituals, nothing. And so my mother was one of those, I guess, difficult spirits to break. She was very strong. She was very, very strong-willed. So she did get sent to New York, and they did break her spirit.